Hey Channel Insiders, welcome back to Channel Insider Partner POV, your source for untapped opportunities and unfiltered opinions in the IT channel, all to help you make better business decisions. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso. My guest today is Chance Irvine, Vice President of Information Technology at Transit Technologies. Chance partners with several channel solutions and services businesses and says that without them, he wouldn't have a team. In this episode, Chance explains why he leverages the IT channel and what he looks for in a channel partner. Chance, welcome. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you because I think that you offer such a wealth of knowledge to our MSP, reseller, and overall audience of solution providers who are just wondering, how can I do my job better, even if it's just a little bit? And I think you've got such great knowledge for that. So I really want to start out first by discussing what you do on a day-to-day basis. So why don't you go ahead and tell me, what is Transit Technologies and how long has it been in operation?
So Transit's a holding company established about 5 years ago. We manage 7 operating companies, one of which is a recent acquisition. Our operating companies range from just a few years to over 40 years old. Transit's companies are improving quality of life with safe, effective, and reliable mobility through innovative technology solutions. On the mobility side, it's fixed route or non-emergency medical transportation, microtransit, trip planning.
So when people ask you what you do on a day-to-day, when your family asks you what your responsibility is, you might have 2 different answers there, but what is your responsibility of your role on a day-to-day basis at Transit?
Main buckets of things: IT operations, security and compliance, technology purchasing, and vendor management. And then, of course, depending on who I'm talking to, well, what do any of those things mean, right? So long and short, I'm helping make sure our user base and the resources we use are as secure as they can be, and that all of our users can get their job done with the equipment they have.
So within that job, Chance, how do you leverage channel partners, and how critical is this to your role and your company, Transit Technologies?
Sure. For us and for me, just my aspect of how I look at things, channel is very critical to our success. At Transit, we run a very lean internal team. We depend on third parties for MSP, for help desk and network needs, MSSP for SOC and SOAR security solutions. And we have a VCSO program with a particular third party that helps us with our readiness. Building a team is an investment, whether it's internal folks or external. So it's important to utilize resources that you need at the time, and hiring all of the skill sets you need internal just doesn't make sense in today's world. Some of those key specialty areas or deep engineering you might need to have them in-house for some companies. It's just never going to work. You might get them there for a short time for a short project, but you're likely not to keep them interested for the long haul. So it doesn't make sense to go through that expense of onboarding that deep talent. That's where, where I need that deep talent, need to outsource that, because you don't need that every day. So that's some of the reasonings behind why the channel makes sense for us. We need general, jack of all trades guys or gals on the team every day. But then when those big issues come up, go get those partners that have those deep bench of skill sets so they can bring in that specialty person so we can get over that project or that hump quickly. Internal folks, jack of all trades folks, they can do it. They'll eventually figure it out if you've got a year. But the business world today, they don't have a year for anything. To me, it just makes sense to build that team with those external partners so that we can more effectively accomplish those milestones that the business is going to have for us.
No, very well put. And I really like what you say about running lean, and this is how you're able to build up literally your team, Chance. I think if these guys and gals weren't there, it would just be you. We'd be looking at the face of that department. And I think it's important to point out, it's not outsourcing and then walking away. These are people that you speak to, I'm assuming, on a fairly regular basis.
Absolutely. The MSP specifically and the VCSO program, constantly. Our MSSP, the SOC SOAR group, they're doing things every day, and we get messaging and whatnot, but the other groups are very much look and feel like they're internal folks, talking to them numerous times. I mean, we're starting this morning with this podcast, but for 2 hours before, I've had all kinds of conversations back and forth with my MSP already this morning, and I will the rest of the day. It's just like they're the systems administrators or systems engineers on my team. They are. I have access to some technologists within our operating companies, but they are highly focused on the solution they're selling, making sure their business can do the things to make their revenue. Some of the security and compliance things that I'm concerned with, we've extrapolated that need for them to be worried about it, at least not as much as they would have to if my role wasn't here. And the third parties I bring to the table accomplish that for them. When we have to, we tap into those folks if the issue that we're tracking is specific in one of those organizations, because it's going to be that tech asset within that company that's going to fix it. But on a day-to-day basis, we're covering the breadth of those needs for them.
Are there any examples you can give me to kind of explain some of the challenges in your role that you rely on your IT partners to help you solve? Definitely, I know that having people in place is the number one need that you have, but can you get a little bit more granular for me?
Change in capabilities for solutions over time. I and the folks within the operating companies, when something comes up and we have, okay, something's changed in our environment, but it's been 2 years since we've looked at this. Well, in 2 years out in the market, there's 50 new things that have come about that might be a possibility for us to how to solve a problem. We don't have time to dig down to what are the 2 or 3 that actually are going to match up with us. So some of the third parties I'm using, that's what they do. So they're basically technology brokers. In the past, you had VARs, but a VAR will bring the best of what it is they sell, but that might not be the best for us. Right. So I'm using partners today that look at the entire market and they narrow down based on the scope we have. They find across the entire market, what are the 2 or 3 we should be focused on? That's a lot of work. It would take me a couple of months to do that well. I hand that off. Here's my scope. I'd like to discuss this in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, they'll have most of it broken down. That's one of the examples. Security and compliance. We're taking through all of our companies through SOC 2. SOC 2 is a significant compliance if you've not done anything. And ISO 27001, very similar. And I mentioned that our new acquisition has ISO 27001 already. Mm-hmm. Well, our other 6 companies, we were really starting from scratch. It's taken a lot to be ready to go through the SOC 2 Type 2 this year. Had we not used the outsource partners, we would be still a year and a half or two for us to be ready on our own, because we don't know the give and takes that are going to happen during that audit. What exactly do we have to be ready for? How do we prepare our teams across the different business units? Because it's not really an IT thing. It's a business thing. Mm-hmm. So being able to change the hearts and minds within our organization, I would have eventually got it done, but similar to my comments earlier, the company doesn't have time for me to figure that out. Another big one, buying power. As a small organization, I can buy most of the things we need directly, but I'm only going to have the leverage of what my business will utilize. So my throughput is finite. It's only what it is. But going through partners and leveraging their buying power, some of the folks provide the opportunity to buy as them. Now I am a much bigger fish. That might equal another 10 or 15% in discounts. I also caution my peers, you got to make sure your problems remain solved. Don't do that just to get leverage to push down your costs if you're not actually getting your problem solved. You didn't save anything in that case. But some of the challenges within doing these things, sometimes the business leaders want you to chase the dollars. Cheapest, cheapest, cheapest. Well, cheapest of the things that are right. And you got to fight for making sure that's the right thing. So in this particular question, that's an important concern I have for my peers. Do chase the dollars, but chase the dollars after you've chased the solution.
And I imagine a lot of that responsibility comes down to you, even when you're starting the process. It's just, how am I balancing getting the job done with my budgets, with my constraints, and with pleasing leadership to a certain extent as well? With that said, when you're thinking about all of these things that you need to get done, and you're also thinking about those budgets, and you're also thinking about what all the bosses are telling you to do and the timelines and so on, what do you look for for inside one of your outsourced IT teams when you're taking on a new MSP or a new solution provider altogether, or maybe one is pitching you for the first time? What do you specifically look for when you are going down that process?
Number one is, are they going to solve my problem, or are they
Mhm.
pushing a solution looking for a problem?
Oh.
So, do they understand my business? Do they understand my problems? If you're not solving my problems, it doesn't matter. There's nothing else to talk about. Second is, can they be an extension of my team? I need my users to think of them as transit IT ops. Whatever partner they are, sure, the end users are going to know that these people are coming from these other companies. I mean, most of the communications, they're going to see their domain in the emails. But will they operate with me so that the end users will like, wow, I know they're from another company, but it really feels like they just work for you. I don't know how it can work otherwise. In my opinion, if it's not like that, then it's a lesser outcome for the business. I need the people to feel like we're family, so to speak. That's just my own take on it. That's how I try to build with external teams. They've got to know over time, of course. I mean, you don't have this day one or even month or even maybe quarter one when you bring on a new MSP. So it's not about how can they do that the instant they show up, but are they willing to work in that direction? Because in 6 months or in definitely in 12 months, I should have some users really saying high accolades about these partners. And if they're not, I made a bad decision. Another concern for my peers out there, this is work. This is team building, just like it would be if you hired people. Just because I want it to be that way, that just doesn't mean it shows up that way. You got to put in the energy for it. I'm very diligent about keeping an eye on how are these folks within these MSPs, how are they interacting? Do they give shorthanded response to my end users? And the end users are business people, not technologists. Just like you would have a green sysadmin, brand new sysadmin help desk person, they're not going to do perfect right out of the gate. Typically, technologists don't communicate very well. They give only enough information to the end user that would make sense for that help desk person. They've got to learn that. A new MSP coming into my business world, they don't know transit yet. It's going to take a minute. And they're talking to me at the transit level, and they may only help one of my 7 companies for a week, and then they jump to the other company. That's different. It's a different company. It's different people. They have a different lineage or history to get them where they are today. So all of that is important to understand going into a relationship with a new partner. You've got to tell them up front the dynamics you have in your organization. Not all my peers are going to have 7 companies underneath. You're probably going to have one, but you do have different departments. Your companies are of a different size. You have different people came from different places. All of that's the same for all of us. You've got to put in the energy to make that work. So that number 2 was internal and external. That third party has to be willing to go through that with you, and you have to be willing to put the energy in to work towards that outcome. It's not going to just happen. Even if you don't want to get all the way to the family feeling, like I mentioned, you still have expectations, but expectations are realized over time with correction and guidance. There's a third piece for me, and will they help me think strategically? I can't have them be order takers. Just because I say, hey, we need to do this, A, B, and C, I may describe it in a way that is a absolute most convoluted way to get it accomplished. And I need them to say, hey, I think I understand your outcome, but we have 3 other options, any one of which would be easier. Can we look at that? I need them to challenge me with those things. Certain processes might be order taking, but if that's the only thing they're doing, I think you're missing out on the value of having a third party helping you out.
Listening to all of this, is there any advice that you would give to IT partners to better present their value when they pitch to you or in that first meeting with you and other IT leaders about their solutions, about their services? How can they immediately come across to you as the IT partner that you want to engage in business with?
First part of it would be them starting out with what could they find on the internet
Mhm.
about us, and asking me engaging questions that's going to tell me they're trying to understand, 1, our business, and 2, the problems I really have at hand right now. Most of the beginning of that conversation needs to be more about learning those things well, so they can have more connected information about what service or product they're going to bring to the table. Because if they understand my parts well, they can speak to why their solution is going to solve my problems. If they're taking that approach, that's going to be way more heartening to me versus, hey, we've got this great solution and it does all these things. Do you even know if all those things matter to me? Start with that connection first would be my number one for those third parties.
Going on from there, you've mentioned quite a few times throughout this interview is just how big of a deal the channel is to you. You're a big proponent going through the channel and leveraging IT partners. What do you think, or what reasons have you heard as to why some of your colleagues in the industry don't outsource any aspects of their IT and don't go through the channel?
I think the number one I hear with most of my colleagues is they're so concerned with loss of control. Every time I tell them, it's like, well, if you actually lost control, then you didn't do your agreement with them very well. Your scope was way off and you never should have signed it. There's ways to ensure you don't lose control. There are third parties that only work is if you give us full control, we'll support you, but my team's the only ones in there. Well, then that's the wrong partner for you, unless that's what you're looking for. To some extent, everything's negotiable. And where things aren't negotiable, you got to make hard decisions. Maybe that's not the party you want to deal with. You've got to know the scope. You've got to make that clear. And there's plenty of third parties out there that are willing to work with you to start where you are and to help you grow to where you need to be. That's another key thing in some of the other questions as well. Sometimes it's overwhelming to just get in with a third party because this third party specializes in a certain place where you want to be one day, but you have these solutions today. You have a particular network today that's not their specialty, but you want to go towards their specialty. Okay, you got to work that into your implementation. So all of that is around loss of control. You can't just jump to some place that matches them. And then also make sure your scope is clear on you want to co-manage. I think co-manage is a key term there. If you want to retain some control, but you can outsource this party, it's a co-managed scenario. You got to talk through that with them. The next one is not being secure. That's a relevant thing to be concerned with. But for most medium and small businesses, that third party is probably well more secure than you are in most cases. Not all cases, not meaning to offend anybody, but my organization's right in there. We are more secure now because of the third parties we brought in. Keeping in mind, security and compliance was one of the reasons we were working on some of these things, so I would hope so. But in most cases, even if you're just looking for support for help desk and things like that, most of the parties out there, they should already be very secure. And if they're not, you shouldn't be picking them, in my opinion. The level of security at this point, if you look 5+ years back, it wasn't the case. Some of the third parties out there were just getting their feet on the ground. And some still are, right? There's always a new one out there. But for the most part, third-party solutions, MSPs and MSSPs, they're very well grounded in security and availability. Last one I would point out, lots of my peers will say, there's really no good partners locally. Not necessarily true in my area here, but my networks all around the country. They don't have great options where they are. Well, I challenge them with, in today's world, why are you worried about that? Lots of companies, most of their people are remote anyway. At this, especially after the pandemic. I know it's scary, but bite the bullet. Get into a short agreement with some partner. On a per unit cost perspective, it'll be very expensive, but do a 90-day agreement. They're not going to give you any discounts for that, but some of them will give you a taste in a very small scope so you can kind of feel it. Ask for it. They might not advertise it, but ask for it. I'm a big proponent of they can't tell you no if you don't ask. So get in there, try a little bit, see how that remote team can help you in your organization. Just because it's not local, great. There's talent all over the world. There's talent all over the United States. If you need to keep it in the States, great, keep it in the States, but there's great folks everywhere.
We're just getting this conversation going. Come back on Tuesday for part 2 of my interview with Chance Irvine. Thanks so much to Chance for joining me today, and thank you for watching or listening. You can check out all episodes of Channel Insider Partner POV on channelinsider.com or watch on YouTube at channelinsider_news and trends. You can also listen to the podcast version of every episode on your preferred listening platform. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow wherever possible so you never miss an episode. You can also connect with Channel Insider on LinkedIn and X at Channel Insider. You can connect with me as well on the same platforms at Katie Bavoso. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Bavoso, and I'll see you next time.